All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children, men will die for their wives and children, and God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts: the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Emotional labor fatigue. Marxism by emotionality and feminized oppression, victim resentment, Olympic Games. Written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. The woman who rules you without a crown. How emotional tyranny, financial parasitism, and the politics of female resentment are destroying men, and what stoic fire can set you free. I once watched a man beg his wife not to flush their marriage down the toilet, kneeling, tears in his eyes, offering therapy, offering change while she stood there like a priestess at an altar of spite, silent, arms crossed. Already scrolling on her phone for divorce lawyers. He lost the house, he lost the kids, he lost 60% of his income to alimony. And the court looked at him like he was the criminal. This isn't oppression, it's regime change, and women aren't the oppressed class. They're the ruling oligarchy in family law, emotional warfare, and social propaganda. You think men dominate? Open your eyes. Women initiate 73% of divorces, CDC 2022, weaponize children like tactical nukes, and walk away with the loot, while men drop dead by the thousands in silence alone, unemployed, disowned. Male suicide? Nearly 80% of suicides in the US are men, and the peak age is not 80, it's 45 to 54, the divorce years. Coincidence? No, it's genocide by gynocentrism. You're not emotionally stunted. You've been emotionally castrated by a culture that rewards female hysteria and punishes male truth. They call it toxic masculinity when you stand up for yourself. But when a woman screams, lies, or spends your life savings on shine holes, that's self-care. They teach you to be open-minded, but the moment you question a woman's narrative, you're exiled like James Damore, fired for citing peer-reviewed science on cognitive sex differences. Feminism isn't a movement for equality. It's a revenge cult built on Andrea Dworkin's foundational lie. All men are guilty. They don't want fairness. They want dominion. And they've got it in the courts, in HR, in schools, in media, in marriage, in bed. I've seen men reduced to debt slaves because their wife said, "If you loved me, you'd buy me that 200 handbag." I've seen fathers arrested for commenting on their child's school photo online, while the mother who blocked access gets a standing ovation from the judge. This isn't justice. This is emotional tyranny dressed as victimhood. The red pill isn't optional anymore. It's oxygen. And if you don't swallow it now, you will die gasping in the ruins of a civilization that sacrificed its sons to feed the goddess of resentment, dominion, the hidden power of female sovereignty in emotional tyranny. Woman is the genius of the species, Schopenhauer wrote, and he wasn't complimenting her baking skills. He meant she's evolution's ultimate strategist, programmed not to conquer with muscle, but with mood, with silence, with tears that fall like mortar shells on the male psyche. And I've watched her do it. Not in ancient myth, not in philosophy books, but in my friend's kitchen at 2 a.m., where his wife stood motionless, arms crossed, not speaking, not crying, just being silent while he paced like a caged bear, begging her to say something, anything, because her silence was louder than a siren. That's not love. That's emotional martial law. Let me be brutally honest. The gynocratic triad, tears, silence, moral superiority, is not a glitch in the system. It's the operating system itself. Women don't need fists or laws to dominate. They've mastered the art of nonviolent coercion so completely that men now pay alimony to women who never worked a day, raise kids who aren't biologically theirs, and lose their homes, all while being told they're the privileged ones. The CDC reported in 2022 that women initiate 70 to 80% of divorces. 70 to 80%. That's not oppression. That's a hostile takeover. And yet, in every divorce courtroom in the West, the woman walks in, draped in the velvet cloak of victimhood, while the man is treated like a defaulted loan. I've read the MGTOW forums, thousands of them, and not one story is fabricated. These aren't bitter neckbeards ranting into a void. These are engineers, doctors, teachers, men who once believed in partnership, only to be told, if you leave, I'll call the police and say you're abusive. And they don't say it as a threat. They say it calmly, quietly, like it's just a fact of nature, like gravity or taxes. And the worst part, it works. Because the state, the courts, the police, the media, they're all genocentric institutions. They assume male guilt. They assume female fragility. They've built a civilization where a woman's word is law and a man's life is collateral. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that a man should bear himself with dignity, even when others do not. But try telling that to a man who's been accused of domestic violence because he raised his voice during an argument. Yes, that's now a crime in Canada, and now he's locked out of his home, can't see his kids, and is paying $4,000 a month in legal fees. The Stoic ideal is dead, not because men are weak, but because the rules changed. The game was rigged. We were told to be strong, calm, rational, but then punished the moment we acted like men. We're told we're emotionally stunted for not crying on command, while women weaponize tears like tactical nukes. A man expresses anger. He's violent. A woman expresses anger. She's standing up for herself. This isn't equality. This is emotional judo, and women have been training for millennia. Schopenhauer saw it clearly. Woman isn't oppressed. She's optimized. Her power isn't in loudness, but in leverage. She doesn't need to shout because she knows that a single sentence, "I'm not happy," can collapse an entire man's world. She wields moral superiority like a crown, and the feminist movement has polished that crown into a weapon. They scream about patriarchy while wielding veto power over emotional peace in every relationship. This is Eve's law. In any union, the woman holds the kill switch. She can end harmony with a sigh, a side-eye, or a whispered, "Maybe we should separate," and the man, he's left scrambling, apologizing, offering vacations, flowers, therapy, anything to restore the peace she destroyed. Look at the double standards. Ancient Rome allowed men to divorce barren women. Spartan law punished men who failed to sire heirs, but today a woman can abort a child without telling the father, and it's legal. In Sweden, men have been arrested for commenting online that abortion should require paternal consent. Think about that. A man says maybe fathers should have a say, and the state throws him in jail. But a woman can terminate a pregnancy unilaterally, erase a man's future, and face zero consequences. That's not equality, that's unilateral disarmament of the male role in reproduction. And don't give me that my body, my choice garbage. Your body, yes, but the child, that's not yours alone. And if you destroy what's not yours to destroy, don't act surprised when men stop trusting, stop marrying, stop investing. The lie of male dominance in relationships collapses the moment you examine the data. Men earn more, yes, but women control spending, relationships, and emotional climate. They claim oppression while securing 70% of custody awards, lifetime alimony, and social sympathy. They weaponize victimhood like a Swiss Army knife. And the worst part, they don't even see it. To them, it's natural, it's right. Like a fish doesn't notice water. Women don't see their power. They just use it again and again, until the man is broken, bankrupt, or dead. And when he kills himself, they say he was toxic. When he fights back, abuser. When he walks away, deadbeat. There is no winning, only survival. I've seen men reduced to phantoms in their own homes, speaking in hushed tones, navigating their wives' moods as if crossing a field of unspoken triggers. I've seen men weep not from sorrow, but from the relentless weight of unseen emotional work that never ceases, never evens out, never earns recognition. And the twist? Advocates shout about emotional labor as if men are untouched by it. But we're simply forbidden to speak up. We're meant to swallow the quiet, the tears, the guilt-laden remarks, the silent judgments, the sense of moral high ground, all while being branded the oppressors. This isn't work, it's submission, and the cost, our self-respect. So let's stop pretending. The patriarchy is a myth. The matriarchy is real. It operates quietly, emotionally, insidiously, but it rules. And until men wake up, until they stop buying the blue pill that tells them they're the villains in their own lives, they'll keep losing families, fortunes, freedom. The gynocratic triad isn't going anywhere, but we can refuse to play. We can stop funding it. We can stop apologizing for existing. The West wasn't built by men who cowered before tears. It was built by men who faced storms, fought dragons, sailed uncharted seas. And if we want to save it, we'll need to become those men again. Unapologetic, unbroken, and finally free. I've seen men brilliant, principled, men who can calculate quantum states and recite the Federalist Papers from memory, crumble like wet sand when a woman sheds a single crocodile tear or whispers. You don't understand my pain, and I've asked myself, how did we get here? Not to emotional labor fatigue. That's just the symptom, but to this grotesque inversion where truth surrenders to tears, where logic is branded as violence, and where every man is presumed guilty until he proves he's sufficiently broken in spirit. The answer isn't in psychology alone, nor sociology, but in the deliberate weaponization of emotion as epistemology, a cult of feeling that demands worship and destroys dissenters. And if we're to survive this feminist inquisition, we must first name the syllogism that strangles reason in its cradle. Cognitive immunity, how men are trained to submit to lies and deny reality. He who can destroy a thing has the right to name it. Tolkien. And so it is with words, with truth, with justice. When women and their ideological enablers seize the naming of reality, they seize reality itself. I once watched a man in a university seminar, a man with a PhD in physics, tremble when a graduate student, 22, makeup caked like war paint, voice quivering with performative trauma, accused him of emotional violence for questioning her lived experience. He apologized, not because he did wrong, but because the air had been poisoned. The room was thick with the stench of epistemic closure. Only her narrative mattered, only her emotion was sacred. His logic, his data, his reason flushed down the toilet of feminist syllogism. Women are oppressed. She is a woman, therefore she cannot lie. Let me say that louder for the men in the back. She can lie, she does lie. She has lied since Eve blamed the serpent. This is not misogyny, it's zoology, it's history. It's the fossil record of human betrayal. And yet, men, especially educated, well-meaning, rational men, are trained to kneel before this altar of emotional idolatry, to submit their cognitive faculties to the priestesses of victimhood. They are taught that doubt is cruelty, that skepticism is oppression, that asking where's the evidence is an act of war. This is not philosophy, this is brainwashing dressed as morality. Remember Brett Kavanaugh, a man with a spotless record, nominated to the highest court in the land, torn apart by a woman who couldn't remember where she was assaulted, by whom, or even how she got home, yet we were expected to believe she remembered every word of a drunken conversation from 36 years prior. Christine Blasey Ford's story collapsed under the light of logic. Her friend said she never told her. Her therapist said she never mentioned it. Her calendars showed no entries. Her son's birthday party was on the same day. She claimed she was traumatized into muteness. And yet the media, the Democrats, the universities, the churches, the corporations, the entire gynocratic establishment rallied behind her like she was Joan of Arc. Why? Because the feminist syllogism doesn't need truth. It needs emotion, it needs narrative, it needs a sacrifice. And Kavanaugh was the bull dragged into the temple for the ritual. The presumption of innocence, discarded like last season's fashion. Due process, a patriarchal relic. The burden of proof? On him to prove he didn't do it, a complete inversion of justice. This is not a legal system. This is a witch trial with better lighting. And men watched it happen, nodded, and said, well, we have to believe women, as if believing were a virtue and not a surrender of reason to sentiment. I call this cognitive submission syndrome, a psychological disorder where men, upon encountering female emotion or feminist rhetoric, instantly disable their logic circuits and activate their apology protocols. It's like a virus coded into the male psyche through generations of gynocentric conditioning. You see it in the husband who says, I'm sorry, when his wife screams at him for forgetting to take out the trash, even though he did it 2 hours ago. You see it in the CEO who fires a male employee because one woman on Twitter claims he made her uncomfortable with a joke from 2014. You see it in the father who loses custody of his children because his ex-wife claims he's emotionally abusive for daring to enforce bedtime. These men don't defend themselves, they submit. Why? Because they've been taught that resistance is toxic, that doubt is violence, that truth is secondary to feelings, and so they internalize the lie. My reason is dangerous, my skepticism is oppression. My manhood is the problem. They become eunuchs in the temple of female emotional supremacy, castrated not by blades, but by guilt, shame, and the false gospel of equality. Universities are ground zero for this ideological poisoning. They don't teach critical thinking, they teach critical theory, which is not thinking at all, but a dogma disguised as intellect. In gender studies departments, facts are problematic, evidence is colonial, and logic is patriarchal violence. Only the narrative of female victimhood is sacred. Any man who questions it is labeled toxic, privileged, or insult, a modern-day heretic burned at the stake of social media. I once attended a lecture where a professor claimed that men have a biological impulse to dominate and oppress women. When I raised my hand and asked, what about men who protect, provide for, and sacrifice for women and children? He stared at me like I'd blasphemed in church. That's not the narrative, he said. The narrative. Not reality, not truth, not biology, the narrative. This is epistemic closure, a closed loop of ideological certainty where dissent is heresy and questioning is sin. And inside this bubble, men are taught to hate themselves, to distrust their instincts, to surrender their minds to the emotional edicts of women and their feminist priests. Here's the ultimate irony. Men are told to be vulnerable, to open up, to share their feelings, but only if it serves female emotional needs. If a man expresses pain over being falsely accused, abandoned by his children, or betrayed by his wife, he's whining, entitled, or angry. But if he cries because his wife wants a divorce and he's losing his kids, suddenly, vulnerability is weakness. Suddenly, emotion is manipulation. The truth. Men are allowed to be emotional only when it validates female superiority or confirms male guilt. Otherwise, shut up and pay. This is not empowerment. This is emotional exploitation. Feminism doesn't want equality. It wants supremacy. It doesn't want justice. It wants vengeance. And men, like trained dogs, wag their tails and beg for scraps of approval, even as the system strips them of rights, children, and dignity. Let's talk data. A 2010 study by Lissac and Miller found that between 2% and 10% of sexual assault allegations are demonstrably false, and that's only the ones that can be proven false. The real number is likely higher. Yet, under the Believe All Women movement, we are told that 0 accusations are false, that every woman who speaks is a goddess of truth, that men must never question, never doubt, never defend themselves. This is not justice. This is male terror. It's a system where a man can be destroyed by a whisper, a rumor, a lie, and no one will stand for him. I know men who've lost their jobs, their families, their reputations, because a woman said he made her uncomfortable for not smiling at her in an elevator. No evidence, no investigation. Just her word, and the mob descends. And when these men speak up, they're called misogynists, predators, or angry white men. The trap is set. Be vulnerable, but only on their terms. Be emotional, but only if it serves her. Think for yourself. That's toxic masculinity. And here's the master trap, the testing if he's open to changing his mind con. Women and feminists love to say, I just want a man who's open-minded, who can grow, who can evolve. sounds reasonable until you realize they don't mean open to evidence. They mean open to surrender. They don't want debate. They want capitulation. They don't want dialogue. They want dogma. I once watched a man spend 3 hours debating a feminist on Reddit, citing studies, logic, history, only for her to say, "You're clearly not open to changing your mind." Translation: you haven't agreed with me yet. This is not intellectual honesty. This is emotional blackmail. They demand that men abandon logic, tradition, biology, and common sense. Yet when men do, they're still called problematic. Because the goal isn't truth, the goal is control. And the weapon is emotional labor fatigue, the exhaustion of constantly appeasing, apologizing, and submitting to irrational demands until the man's mind is broken and his spirit is crushed. But there is a cure. I call it the red pill immunity framework, a mental model to inoculate men against feminist and leftist ideological infection. Step 1. Recognize the syllogism, "She is a woman, therefore she cannot lie," and laugh it out of the room. Step 2. Demand evidence, not emotion. If a woman says you hurt her, ask how, when, where, with what proof. Step 3. Reject epistemic closure. No narrative, no ideology, no emotion overrides logic and fact. Step 4. Reclaim your cognitive sovereignty. Your mind is not a temple for female feelings. It is a fortress of reason, built on the transcendentals, the good, the true, the beautiful. Step 5. Embrace masculine truth. A man who defends himself, his family, his rights, and his mind is not toxic. He is virtuous. He is free. He is awake. The West was built by men who valued truth over feelings, duty over desire, logic over lies. From Socrates drinking the hemlock to defend principle, to Newton uncovering the laws of the universe, to the founding fathers writing a constitution that presumed innocence and protected rights. Our civilization was forged in reason, not emotion. But now we are told to abandon that legacy, to kneel before the altar of female feelings, to let tears trump truth, to let hysteria override history. This is not progress. This is barbarism with a sociology degree. And men, especially red-pilled, rational, truth-seeking men, must resist, not with rage, not with violence, but with logic, courage, and laughter. Laugh at the absurdity of "believe all women." Laugh at the idea that a man must prove his innocence in a court of emotions. Laugh at the feminist who claims biology is a social construct while pregnant. And then stand firm, speak true, live free, or die trying. Because the alternative is not equality. It is enslavement by sentiment. It wasn't until I found that crumpled credit card statement tucked behind a wedding photo, $2,400 at a boutique I'd never visited. Charged the week she accused me of not showing love, that I realized the truth. She wasn't spending money, she was weaponizing it. Every purchase receipt was a silent ultimatum. Every surprise shopping spree, a test of loyalty rigged to fail. I'd been conditioned to equate sacrifice with devotion, to believe that enduring financial erosion was the price of affection. But this wasn't devotion, it was a slow, silent coup waged through Zara hauls and Instagram tags, where my paycheck became the battleground and her smile the fleeting reward for surrender. The shopping test, financial domination, and the cult of female consumption. Love is not a credit line. My father growled the night I asked him why he refused to co-sign on my fiancé's third luxury handbag loan. I didn't understand then, I do now. What I mistook for romantic generosity was in fact the opening salvo of a psychological siege, where affection is held hostage to receipts and emotional intimacy is priced per square inch of leather. The phrase, "if you loved me, you'd buy it," is not an expression of vulnerability. It is a financial shakedown disguised as sentimentality, a gynocentric Molotov cocktail tossed into the fragile glass house of male trust. This isn't love. It's emotional blackmail with a Visa card. Consider the Shine Wife, a real archetype flooding divorce courts and Reddit threads from Boise to Bristol. Picture this, a man with 2 jobs, one in construction, one driving Uber, sweating through summer heat waves and winter blizzards, so his wife can binge order 300 worth of polyester knockoffs every 48 hours. He wears the same boots for 5 years, she has 37 dresses she's worn once. When he dares suggest a budget, she bursts into tears, claiming he's crushing her self-expression. He's not crushing her self-expression, he's trying to keep the lights on. Meanwhile, she posts unboxing videos on TikTok with captions like, "My man treats me like royalty, tell him blessed financialdom," while he quietly takes out a payday loan to cover the electric bill. This isn't marriage, it's economic rape by installment plan. The Federal Reserve confirmed in 2023 that household debt hit $17.5 trillion, $17.5 trillion, with credit card debt soaring to record highs and women accounting for the lion's share of retail spending, particularly in fashion and lifestyle categories. Let's not mince words, women, on aggregate, spend more irresponsibly than men when given access to credit. Study after study, FICO, Experian, the National Bureau of Economic Research, shows women carry higher balances, make minimum payments, and are more likely to max out cards on non-essential goods. And yet, when men object, they're labeled cheap, controlling, or emotionally unavailable. The irony. These same women would scream bloody murder if their husbands spent that money on cigars, guns, or golf clubs. But when she buys 10 identical pairs of 15 leggings from Shine, it's self-care. When he buys a single tool, it's selfish. Welcome to the economic parasitism matrix, a system where female spending is sanctified as emotional necessity, while male provision is weaponized as moral obligation. In traditional societies, men provided meat, shelter, and protection, not Louis Vuitton knockoffs from Wish.com. The hunter brought home the mammoth, the gatherer picked berries. Today, the gatherer scrolls TikTok and clicks buy now on a 200 faux fur coat she'll wear once during an Instagram photo shoot. The evolutionary instinct to provide hardwired into men since the Paleolithic has been hijacked by consumer capitalism and feminist entitlement into a grotesque farce. We were bred to protect and provide for offspring. Instead, we're funding influencer narcissism, where a woman's dream is to have 10,000 followers and a closet full of plastic junk shipped from Guangzhou. The male instinct to protect has been perverted into financial castration by retail therapy. One MGTO I spoke with, a former Silicon Valley engineer making $340,000 annually, admitted he lost everything after his wife consistently spent $8,000 a month on designer clothes, spa treatments, and spiritual getaways in Sedona. When he finally voiced concern, saying, "We can't keep this up," she reacted as if he'd betrayed her, replying, "If you truly backed my goals, you'd earn more." Pause and consider that he was in the top 2% of earners nationwide, yet his effort was dismissed because her ambitions demanded his collapse. This isn't rare, it's now standard. And when men push back, they're labeled accused of harmful behavior just for valuing financial responsibility, while women are praised for being authentic, even when authenticity means six-figure debt and failed relationships. Scroll through TikTok and you'll find thousands of finfluencers, mostly women, glamorizing debt like it's a personality trait. You only live once, they chirp, swiping credit cards at Neiman Marcus, sipping champagne in hotel suites they can't afford, urging their 18-year-old followers to max out your card for confidence. These women aren't financial advisors, they're ideological saboteurs, peddling financial anorexia as empowerment. They'll tell you to invest in yourself while wearing 500 jeans they bought on Buy Now, Pay Later, yet they mock men who drive used cars or cook rice and beans. Andrew Tate's Bugatti test cuts through the noise. A real man should be able to afford luxury without debt. But most men today can't even afford rent because they've been bled dry by the cult of female consumption, where love is measured in square footage of closet space and the number of Amazon deliveries per week. And let's expose the pretending to have no budget scam. The widespread relational tactic where women claim they don't think about money while simultaneously demanding designer goods, spa weekends, and first-class flights. "I'm just spontaneous," they say, as if fiscal ignorance were a personality quirk rather than a predatory strategy. Meanwhile, the man is expected to figure it out to magically generate income to cover her spontaneity. This isn't innocence, it's economic warfare by feigned helplessness. It's the same tactic used by toddlers. I didn't mean to, while the milk spills everywhere. But here, the spillage is your retirement fund. The truth is as old as Hesiod. Women are the price men pay for peace. But today, the price has been inflated into infinity. We've gone from dowries to divorce fines, from courtship to financial domination. And the left, those cultural Marxists in academia, media, and government, have enabled it. They call it gender equality, while women inherit 65% of inheritances, receive 90% of alimony, and win 80% of custody cases, even when they're the abusive party. They normalize female irresponsibility as breaking stereotypes, while demonizing male prudence as patriarchal control. This isn't equality. It's asymmetric warfare where men are expected to provide, protect, and perform, while women are absolved of all fiscal responsibility and moral consequence. Wake up, your wallet is not a love letter. Your bank account is not a loyalty test, and no woman, no matter how blessed her aura or how many crystals she owns, deserves your financial suicide. The red pill isn't just about dating, it's about economic sovereignty. Stop funding the circus, stop paying tribute to the temple of female narcissism, break the spell, walk away, and when they call you cheap, smile and say, "No, I'm just solvent." I was in a coffee shop last week, listening to two women laugh about how they'd broken their husbands into paying for spa weekends by threatening emotional withdrawal. "He'd rather write a 2,000 check than deal with my silence," one boasted, sipping her oat milk latte like it was a chalice of victory. And right then, it hit me. This isn't love, this isn't partnership, this is emotional labor fatigue weaponized as a class war. These women weren't exhausted from giving, they were exhausted from not getting enough to spend. The labor wasn't emotional at all. It was financial extraction disguised as affection, a parasitic economy where a man's worth is measured in guilt-paid invoices. And this is exactly how the resentment machine runs, not through brute force, but through 1,000 tiny humiliations, each one reinforcing the lie that men owe, men fail, and men must pay forever. The politics of resentment, how feminism weaponizes envy to destroy men and civilization. Resentment is the acid that devours the soul until only a hollow shell remains, screaming for vengeance, and modern feminism has become its most aggressive form. I once observed a man, let's name him David, lose everything, his kids, his savings, his mental stability, all for questioning why his ex-wife could walk away with 70% of his income, while he was labeled an unfit father for something as minor as forgetting gym socks. He never raised a hand, never strayed, never shouted, just lived as a man within a system designed to penalize that very identity. The family court framed it as safeguarding children. The counselor labeled it processing pain. The judge ruled it fair. I label it theft, masked as emotional righteousness. This isn't an outlier, it's standard practice. In the US, 80% of divorces are started by women. Yet 70% of court-ordered support payments go from men to women, even with shared custody. Women initiate the split, secure the majority of financial resources, and still posture as victims, as though they've won a grand prize in suffering. This isn't fairness. It's resentment inversion. Those in control recast their authority as victimization, then leverage that fiction to intensify assaults on men. Women hold 93% of family court judgeships in certain states, dominate HR divisions, where they exploit terms like toxic masculinity to remove capable men, and lead 75% of education roles, yet they cry patriarchy as if men still run the world. Reality check. The power structure shifted long ago, and now women are constructing institutions atop the wreckage of men's lives. Consider The Handmaid's Tale, a show so steeped in female-centered fantasy, it might as well carry a disclaimer. Imagine dystopia with no basis in actual history, yet backed by public funding and adored by women who collect financial support just for existing. Margaret Atwood didn't craft a cautionary tale about oppression. She penned fantasy material for those fueled by grievance. In reality, men account for 97% of battle deaths, 93% of job-related fatalities, and 80% of suicides, yet none of this registers when women feel emotionally shaken by an offhand remark online. The press ignores male expendability. Instead, it elevates female suffering like a sacred ritual. From sitcoms to dramas to news reports, men are painted as clueless fools or violent predators, while women are portrayed as pure beings trapped in a world ruined by men. The facts. The typical man labors 47 additional days each year, compared to the typical woman to achieve the same quality of life, because women, on average, make 16% less, not from bias, but due to opting for safer, socially praised roles like human resources or teaching, while men fill the high-hazard, physically taxing, and lethal occupations such as mining, construction, and firefighting. But utter this at a social gathering and see how quickly the hostility flares. Advocates of gender-based privilege don't seek fairness, they seek dominance. They've already seized control of family law, legal outcomes, and public narratives. Now they insist on praise for their battle, while men waste away in jails for unpaid child support after losing jobs lost due to diversity policies pushed by the very movement claiming victim status. The contradiction is so dense it could suffocate a mule. Look at James Damore, the Google engineer who wrote a 10-page memo citing peer-reviewed psychology on sex differences only to be crucified by feminist ideologues, while the woman who led the mob, Tracy Chu, now runs a multi-million-dollar diversity racket. Damore didn't say women were inferior. He said they tend to prefer people over systems, which explains why fewer women pursue coding careers. But in the Church of Woke, truth is blasphemy. He was fired, doxxed, and forced into hiding, while feminist leaders were promoted, praised, and paid six-figure speaking fees to preach the same man-hating dogma that got him destroyed. This isn't about ideas, it's about power, and the power structure is clear. Women in HR, media, and academia hold the keys to professional survival, and they use them to reward loyalty to the cult of female victimhood and punish any dissent. Andrea Dworkin, the self-proclaimed philosopher who once wrote "Men are the problem," wasn't advocating justice. She was weaponizing biological resentment. Her entire thesis rests on the idea that male existence is inherently oppressive, which is not a moral argument, but a metaphysical hate crime. If you believe that, you don't seek reform, you seek extermination. And that's exactly what we're seeing. Kill all men hashtags, male-only draft registries, male-only prison rape jokes, and a complete erasure of male suffering from public discourse. When women protest, they get media coverage. When men protest, they get tasers. When women riot, it's uprising. When men riot, it's terrorism. The double standard isn't a bug, it's the operating system. This rot traces back to Rousseau, that sentimental fraud who romanticized female virtue and male corruption, laying the groundwork for the modern cult of female innocence. He believed women were naturally pure, men naturally depraved, and that lie has metastasized into today's feminist dogma. But Aristotle knew better. Virtue is not gendered. Justice isn't measured by who feels more hurt. It's measured by truth. And the truth is that the four horsemen of gynocentric apotheosis are riding hard. 1, female hypergamy, women marrying up, discarding losers, and demanding endless provision. 2, emotional blackmail, you don't love me if you disagree. 3, legal asymmetry, women getting automatic custody, alimony, and protection orders with zero burden of proof. And 4, ideological capture, feminists controlling education, media, and HR to enforce doctrinal purity. These aren't natural forces. They're engineered systems of control designed to extract male labor while denying male dignity, and men keep funding it. We pay taxes that subsidize women's studies departments that teach our sons to hate themselves. We work overtime so our ex-wives can vacation in Bali while we eat ramen in a studio apartment. We stay silent because we're told it's not nice to complain. But niceness is not virtue. Truth is. And the truth is this: civilization was built by men who refused to apologize for their strength, their logic, their duty. We built the Parthenon not because we were privileged, but because we were responsible. Feminism doesn't want equality, it wants to dismantle responsibility and replace it with resentment. So what's the antidote? The Stoic countercode. Not therapy, not appeasement, not self-care bubble baths while the world burns. inner sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal about his feelings. He commanded armies, governed empires, and faced death with equanimity. He knew that external validation is a trap. So must we stop seeking approval from women who see you as a wallet with a pulse. Stop begging for fairness in a system designed to crush you. Build brotherhood outside the genocentric matrix. Men's groups, trade guilds, private networks where loyalty is earned, not faked. Refuse to fund feminist institutions. Withdraw your labor, your money, your attention. And for God's sake, stop having children with women who will weaponize them against you. The cuckoldry rate, 1 in 10 globally, but up to 30% in high divorce societies, meaning millions of men are raising kids that aren't theirs, paying for them, dying for them, while the real father sips margaritas in Tijuana. Is that justice? Is that love, or is it the ultimate con? Schopenhauer was right. Compassion is the basis of morality, but modern feminism has replaced compassion with vengeance. They don't want healing, they want blood. And the only way to stop the bleeding is to stop feeding the vampire. Wake up, walk away, rebuild. The future belongs to those who refuse to apologize for being men. You think she loves you? She loves the idea of you, what you can do for her. You're not a husband, you're a walking ATM with a pulse, and when the cash dries up, so does the affection. Look at the data. 73% of divorces are filed by women, CDC 2022. And in family courts, those kangaroo tribunals where men are presumed guilty of thought crimes against womankind. Fathers get primary custody in less than 15% of cases. You're not a parent. You're a sperm donor with alimony obligations. And if you protest, they'll paint you as abusive, unstable, toxic, a word coined not by science, but by feminist ideologues who hate strength, virtue, and truth. You know what's toxic? A society that rewards women for discarding men like used tampons, then calls him the abuser when he dares to breathe without permission. I once watched a man engineer 6-figure salary, built his own home, divorced over a 300 pair of shoes he refused to buy. His wife screamed, "You don't love me," as the judge handed her the house, the kids, and half his future earnings. He later jumped off the Fremont Bridge. Suicide rate for divorced men double that of married men. Meanwhile, she's on Instagram with a new man, tagging him in blessed posts from a Bali resort he paid for. This isn't love, this is predation dressed in mascara and victimology. Feminism isn't about equality, it's about supremacy. It's the politics of resentment, weaponized by women who want all the rights, none of the responsibilities, and every last dime you earn. You've been lied to since birth. They told you chivalry is noble. No, it's suicide. They told you to be a gentleman, but a gentleman is just a man who kneels when ordered. You're not here to serve women. You're here to build, to lead, to create, not to fund her spa days while you work nights. The red pill isn't bitter, it's liberating. You now see the matrix. Genocentrism is the operating system, feminism is the malware, and your life is the corrupted file. But you're not doomed. You can uninstall it. Stop paying for her whims. Stop believing she's emotionally complex, she's manipulative. Stop thinking she'll change. Her DNA is her destiny. Women are hypergamous by design. They'll always seek higher status, more resources, newer models. That's not hate, that's biology. That's not misogyny, that's mastery. You're not broken. The world is, and now you see it. You're awake. And no amount of virtue signaling podcasts or corporate DEI training will ever put you back to sleep. Share this truth. Speak it like fire. Let them call you a misogynist. Wear it like a medal. Every man who calls you names is a man who's still enslaved, still paying for his wife's yoga retreat while she texts her side piece. You're free. You've seen the strings. You've cut them. Now, go build something real. Brotherhood, legacy, sovereignty. The empire of lies is crumbling, and you, armed with truth, are its executioner. And now the sponsored book introduction, Emotional Labor Fatigue. Marxism by Emotionality and Feminized Oppression, Victim Resentment, Olympic Games. You're not broken. You're not crazy. You're not behind. You're not the problem. But you've been told you are over and over until you started to believe it. I believed it too. I believed that if I just worked harder, talked softer, smiled more, apologized quicker, and kept my mouth shut when women cried or men shamed me. Then maybe I'd finally be accepted. Maybe I'd finally feel okay, but I didn't. I felt worse. Not from work, not from effort, from emotional labor the invisible taxmen pay just to exist in a world that demands we absorb female feelings like human sponges while being blamed for every imbalance. I spent years trying to be a good man in a system that doesn't want good men. It wants obedient boys, silent donors, emotional servants. And I'm done. This book is not for the emotionally comfortable. It's for men who are tired, not of work, not of responsibility, but of being emotionally bled dry by a system that rewards female emotionality like currency while punishing male logic like crime. If you've ever been called toxic for stating a fact, punished for having an opinion, or ostracized for refusing to pretend that feelings are facts, this book is for you. If you've watched women rise in institutions not through competence but through GSR, gossip, shame, rally, and realized that merit is dead, replaced by emotional blackmail disguised as equity, then you already know something is wrong. This book explains what it is, where it came from, and how to dismantle it in your mind and life. I've spent decades studying the psychological machinery behind feminism, Marxism, and the broader left, not as political movements, but as emotional coping mechanisms disguised as ideology. What I found is not pretty. Leftism isn't about justice, it's about unresolved maternal instincts weaponized into social control. It splits the world into infants, protected, entitled, emotional, and predators, blamed, taxed, responsible, mimicking the archetypal failed mother who cannot let her child grow. And men are being cast as predators, not because we are, but because we are the only ones left who can still think, speak, and act independently. That's why we're being erased, not by accident, by design. And it's accelerating. 180 million abortions in 4 decades. Not because women don't want children, but because they want emotional freedom at any cost. The West is being unmade, not by war, but by female emotional entitlement, mass infertility, and institutional capture, all hidden behind words like empowerment, inclusion, and diversity. This book is for men who are red-pilled, not just on gender, but on the entire emotional economy of the modern West. For men who love logic, truth, hierarchy, and beauty, who still believe in the trivium, the transcendentals, and the Western canon. For men who refuse to apologize for being male, for thinking clearly, for standing firm. If you're still clinging to the idea that fairness will return, that reason will win, that women will suddenly become responsible, put this book down. This is not for you. This is not comfort food. This is surgery. And surgery hurts, but it saves lives. I've mapped the ideological possession that has turned women into NPC zombies, repeating slogans, hating men, destroying institutions, and blaming us for their emotional emptiness. I've traced how feminism hijacked Marxism, not for economic justice, but to enforce female emotional dominance. I've exposed the BPD spectrum in political behavior, the collectivist default, the jealousy economy, the abortion industrial complex, and the death of fatherhood, all symptoms of a deeper disease. Arrested development in the female psyche, projected onto society as policy, law, and culture. If you want to stop being manipulated, stop being blamed, stop being drained, this book gives you the tools to reclaim your mind, your sovereignty, and your future. If you're a woman who still believes in equality while demanding special treatment, or a man who bows to female feelings, do not read further. Your time would be better spent elsewhere. This is not for the emotionally invested in the lie. This is for those ready to see the truth, no matter how ugly. Emotional labor fatigue, Marxism by emotionality and feminized oppression, victim resentment, Olympic Games, written by Conrad Reicher. Buy now, links in description.